I think that there's no disagreement that the state has very little reason to take the 10%. I think, as Councilman Berg said, the public out there understands that this is not something that is justified. But I think this measure that we're considering today raises many concerns. First of all, as the managing director said, timing is everything, and I don't think there's any chance of this making a difference in the legislature at this time. We need to make many tough decisions, and I think one of the tough decisions is one of timing. Doing the right thing in the right way at the right time. And I think what we're doing here is the right thing, but perhaps not the right way or at the right time. We need to pick our fights, pick our battles, and knowing what the legislature is facing at this present time, I just don't see anything good coming out of us passing this measure at this time. And while I appreciate our colleague Mr. Berg's passion about this issue, I think some of us through experience have realized that sometimes we need to take a step back and assess the issue in a very calm way. One thing that I think is disturbing me at this point is not only the fact that we're considering this measure in what I consider to be not the best timing, but the press release that was issued, I think, more than ruffled a few feathers. And it's not a matter of us being afraid to take a stand. By all means, no. I think I, as well as all of you, are willing to take this tough stand when we need to. So it's not a matter of that. It's a matter of approaching the legislature with the right spirit at the right time. So I would also strongly urge us to defer this measure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Barimoto. Councilmember Garrett Tamayo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find myself in a difficult position this morning. We passed this resolution out of my committee. We had a very good conversation about the substance of the measure, which I fully support. As has been mentioned previously, this has been an ongoing battle between the county and the state on, first of all, maintaining the status quo, the TAT funds, the public utility funds, the things that we need in order to provide the services to people, but also for the things, like funds for the work that our police officers do, for the tickets that are issued. These battles have been going on for quite some time. So this conversation is nothing new about funds that should rightfully belong to the county and yet are kept by the state. We're in a position now, timing has been mentioned, where the three major issues that we're fighting from the beginning of this legislative session, the TAT funds, the rail funds, and the public utility funds appear to be somewhat safe. And now in the waning days of the legislature, to put any of those at risk, we just had a 12-and-a-half-hour budget hearing yesterday. We're going to have more fun with that today. I'm very concerned about the repercussions of sending this message at this time. Additionally, the press release that was sent out that I read late last night, the headline on the press release states City Councilman Tom Berg and colleagues to take on the state's taxpayer fleecing scheme. And the adjectives and verbs that are used throughout this press release, such as hurling verbal firebombs across Punchbowl Street, those are not words that I would use. At this point, the state is looking at raising taxes. The city is looking at raising taxes and fees. We're all serving the same constituency, and we need to work together. We need to have a spirit of collaboration with the legislature across the street, knowing that the repercussions of our actions affect the same people. We all serve the same people, and the money is coming out of the same pockets that are already empty. So I think that the substance of the resolution is good, but this message, the inflammatory message, is not one of working together, which is something that we are continuing to strive to do. So I'm not going to be able to support passing this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion among the members? No. Second time, Councilmember Cachola.
It's good that Councilmember Gabert Tamayo used certain part of the press release as well as the island viewpoint. The thing that really pissed some of the legislators, both House and Senate, is when you say the word greed on their part. Systematic fleecing, just like you said. And greed is the operative word here for the legislature, and bad faith is the byproduct. Those are really very strong and inflammatory words that are being used. So put yourself in the shoes of the legislators, both House and the Senate, and they will say, you are accusing us of being greedy? You're calling us names? Those are the things that will backfire to us if we open up this thing up. And that's why I'm asking the introducer of this resolution, which I believe has good intentions, good motives, and the right thing to do in terms of getting back our money. But putting gasoline on a fire is not, I believe, we should not do that, because while the legislature is in session, everything is possible. They can make our life here in the city council miserable to a point that we might regret our action as well as the words that we say. And if I recall some of the things that I said in one council debate, I urged the members to please be patient and at the same time don't piss the legislature, member of the legislature, because it will not do us any good. Hopefully, if we have to do this again, we'll do it together as one. Maybe not this time, but in the next legislative session. And I promise you, Councilmember Berg, I'll be there with you if we demand. But let's not use inflammatory words when we deal with them. Thank you.
Further discussion among members, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, Chairman, it's always a difficult decision on matters such as these. While I can appreciate Councilmember Berg's passion on this particular matter, I don't think any of us question the validity of his arguments, but perhaps he was a little bit too passionate in his zeal to recover these funds for our county. If this measure was to move forward, Chairman, I would have to vote against it. I respect my colleagues, all of my colleagues, significantly, but I think the words of Councilmember Cachola, who served at the House, needs to be taken into consideration. As Budget Chair, it's of grave concern to me if there be any effort on the legislature to take this action and justify revisiting our TAT share and other revenues that we are entitled to. I think we've, as my Vice Chair had said, we went through 12.5 hours of review yesterday on the budget. We all know it's a very lean budget, although we are proposing cuts. I think if we forced to make any further cuts, you know, I don't think it's a time where we can look at raising any type of revenues through increase in taxes. What we're facing is a significant reduction in services to the general public, and I think this is not the right time to move in that direction. So I think at this particular juncture, should this move forward, although it does pain me to have to vote against one of my colleagues, I would have to vote no on this matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Martin. I'll call on Council Chair Garcia next.
Thank you, Acting Presiding Officer Harimoto. Now, colleagues, I've heard much about this legislation, not so much on the merits, but also on the timing of this measure that is before us for our consideration. When I decided to put this on the agenda, I did it because out of respect to the committee that passed it out. And it was sunshine on that committee, if I recall. So there was an understanding of the importance of the merits of this issue, so much so that the committee took it on outside of its agenda and subsequently passed it out. So in hearing this measure today, I was trying to respect the process and the committee vote. Also, this is an issue that is top of mind for the fact that we are talking about the elevated fixed rail project, the biggest public works project that the state will ever see. And this is an issue that is closer to home, something that impacts our side of the street, the particular issue of the 10% take off the top. I remember when I lobbied for House Bill 1309 that subsequently became the public law, and there was some discussion on just how much the state would take to process the collection of the fees. I remember talking to the state tax director about this, and in fact, he was against the legislation in total. But we were able to get him to come over to us to understand the importance of the legislation, because he would be given that opportunity to gear up the staffing and the equipment necessary in order to collect the fees on behalf of the city. And subsequent to that, of course, as you've heard, we have questioned whether or not they continue the need to have the 10% over the top, off the top. And we have made numerous inquiries about that. Of course, all to no avail, because we have the subject here today for our consideration. After hearing most of the members and sensing where this might go, I would offer to work with Councilmember Berg, and also I would like to work with the administration to send a joint letter to the leaders of the House and the Senate to, perhaps in not the words that have already been chosen about this subject, but I offer that as an opportunity to send another message across the street, if you will. And while it might be too late to act on this now, as I understand it, we can introduce a whole new measure that has had a public hearing at the legislature. Even if they try to pull this out onto the floor, I think the leadership will remind the members of the House that the public had an opportunity to weigh in on the legislature and to try to bring this measure to the floor. Even if it were to succeed, I don't think it will make it to conference committee with that item in the vehicle that is being mentioned, because it has not had a public hearing. That is the rule now in the legislature, which I like to think is a rule over here, that anything that we consider, the public must have an opportunity to weigh in, at least on this side of the street. And so given that reality, I still felt that this was a need to have this discussion today. Because while we've had conversations across the street on this very subject, this body, especially with the new members on board, have not had the discussion about this particular item. I felt it was important that we have this. If not now, it would have been held next week. It was going to come to us anyway. And so when people feel like they don't want to ruffle feathers, we were going to ruffle feathers next week. There are times, members, when you need to take a stand and to send a message and not have to worry about ruffling feathers or worry about how the other side might react. This is your job. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the city. I've ruffled a few feathers of my own. I don't worry